MHD equations and how to maintain DB0. So I may not have the time to do that, to do all of that today. So if it's not, then I will finish tomorrow. Okay. So first, I would like to remind, before going on, some of the important message that I tried to deliver yesterday. So essentially, the picture I would like you to got is this one. So when at the interface of your computing cells, okay, you have two states essentially, two say hydrodynamical states or MHD states, and those are Riemann problems, which means that you have this wave fan that develops, okay, with the fastest waves outside the fan and different waves inside, okay, the fan. So if you want to describe properly what's happened to your flow, okay, then you have to solve this very accurately, okay, and in general this is a difficult problem. So you have to find methods to do this as accurately as possible. Okay. So the first one we have been discussing is the linearization method, when you assume that your problem is essentially linear. Okay. And then we end up with this nice formula, which, as I said yesterday, means that the flux, okay, that you are looking for to update your cell is the average of the left and right fluxes, okay, plus some correction terms that will guarantee you the stability of your scheme, but will also introduce some diffusion, so some numerical dissipation, okay? Because as you see, there is a difference here between the two states, left and right. So this can be seen, if you want, as a kind of viscosity. And you see that you have a sum over all waves, meaning that you are really picking each signal, okay, and weighting all signal by the waves speed. So essentially, the higher the wave speed, the higher the terms. And so the fastest waves here, okay, they have also, they are associated to the fastest stabilizing terms, okay, because just this lambda is higher for this waves here. So if you want to have a scheme which is stable, you can just, for example, take the largest value of your the largest speed waves, wave speed, sorry, in your problem, and then you will have something stable, but then it will be extremely dissipative, so your scheme will not be accurate, and your flow will be a bit smooth. Okay, so that's a sort of typical philosophy you should be aware of. Okay. So as I said yesterday, the row solver belongs to this category. So those are extremely accurate. Okay, because you are dealing in a sense with the physics of the problem, but they are linearized or linear solver, which means that if you have a big jump, a big discontinuity, they may undergo through problem and crash. And so the other approach I started describing are the so-called HLL solver, which are this time nonlinear. Okay, there is no we don't assume, for example, that the Jacobian is a linear matrix. And the first, the simplest one, so the HLL one, assume that inside the wave fan, okay, there is just a single state to be described, and therefore we replace all the complexity of the wave fan by just one state. Okay, and as I described yesterday, it turns out that just applying some simple conservative laws, so performing on one hand a time integration and on the other hand a spatial integration, well, then you could easily compute the star states, and then repeating the same game with a different volume of control, you could come with the flux at the interface, which is what you are looking for. Okay, and this flux was a bit similar to the first one. To the first one we inferred. So it has the same structure. It depends of the left and the right flux, but this time weighted by the wave speed. Okay, and again this stabilizing term, which can be again seen as a kind of effective viscosity, if you want, that will stabilize the scheme. Okay, so you see the nonlinearity appearing here in these coefficients. They are not 1/2 anymore. They depend on the wave speed, and as I said, in the case where your flow is entirely supersonic, this flux here will become equal to either the flux from the left, either the flux from the right, which is making sense because in that case all the informations come from the supersonic regions. Okay? Right. So so the idea now is to do the same thing, but trying now to be more accurate on what you do inside your wave fan. Okay, so previously we say, okay, hang on, I'm just to have just one single state. Maybe we can do better, and that's the so-called HLLC solver, which are very widely used for hydrodynamics. Okay, so the idea is that, as I said, in hydrodynamics you have three waves. One, say, sound waves which propagate toward the left, one toward the right, and then you have the contact discontinuity in the middle. Okay, so that's three waves, 1, 2, 3. Before I had only two, so I'd say, okay, I'm going to add one in the middle, and this wave is represent the contact discontinuity that I should have in hydrodynamics. So I have now a left state and a right state, okay, and the goal is to find it. So there are a couple of steps. So the first thing is that this contact discontinuity, we know there is pressure equilibrium, okay, through the contact discontinuity, which means that the velocity, the normal velocity, should also be constant through this through the wave fan, and consequence is also that the wave speed has to be equal to the local velocity of the gas. Once again, it's because the contact discontinuity is just advected by the flow without a true propagation like a sound waves, for example. So this leads to simplification, because then you have reduced the number of quantity to be determined. And so the idea here is that for this wave speed here, okay, we can use the velocity that was inferred for HLL, so for the previous solver. So the star velocity here, we can use it as a good guess for the velocity of the fluid in the left and right state, and also the velocity of lambda, also for lambda m. Okay. So once you get this, you need now to have a relation between the quantities from your left star states and your right star states. Okay, so sort of jump relation, and this can be obtained. Well, sorry, you need actually to have three relation. One between the left and star and the left star state, one between the right star and the right state, and one between these two. Okay, so you have essentially three jump relation here, and if we remind what I quickly said, when you have a discontinuity, they must satisfy this relation, which is nothing more than the Rankine-Hugoniot condition written not in the frame of the shock, but in the frame of the lab, or the frame of the grid if you want. Okay, so we have jump relation that will allow us to find all the states which are needed. So we can first apply a jump relation here and a jump relation here, and we will know everything that needs to be done. So that's the third step of this HLLC solver, and that allows us to determine all the star states. Okay, so we know now all the physical conditions within the wave fan. And so now we can infer the fluxes at the interface, again by, for example, applying some volume of control and repeating the same sort of sum that we have been doing for HLL, just performing time integration and space integration, choosing the proper volume of control, and that will get the flux at the interface. Okay, so this time you get something slightly more complicated than for HLL, which is just because you have considered the more complicated situation. So you have now to discuss or to take care of the sign of the wavelength, sorry, of the wave speed. So whether the signal is propagating toward the left or toward the right, okay, you have to consider either your left star state, either your right star state. Essentially, if you are dominated by the signal coming from the left or from the right. Okay, so there is you have to look at the sign of the wave speed. Okay, but otherwise, apart from this, it will be very similar to what we have for HLL with the same flux structure. Okay, so that this solver, generally speaking, is doing quite well for hydro. In particular, it has been demonstrated that it's positively conservative, which means that you should not get any negative density or any negative temperature. So that it tends to be very well, very widely used in hydro. But as I said, now in particular in star formation, we need to deal with the magnetic field. We think it's an important actor, so we need to have something for MHD. And here it turns out that it's not working very well for MHD. Various attempts have been done, but they have not been extremely successful. So I will not spend too much time on that. Essentially, people treat, and it's not very well. It's not very satisfying. So, and the reason why it's probably not the case has been emphasized by Miyoshi and Kusano, which came with this nice HLD solver. It's because essentially HLC, well, is not in a sense sufficiently complex. It does not sufficiently reflect the structure of the MHD flow because it does not contain all the fundamental modes that you have to deal with in MHD. And in particular, it does not contain the tension, the magnetic tension force, or the alpha waves, okay, which, as I said, are fundamental for MHD. Mm-hmm.
If you're just doing hydro, then you only have the 3 waves that you talked about in the HLC.
Mm-hmm.
So what, if I'm just doing hydro with no MHD, why is HLC
no, as I said,
different from the row solver?
From the
row solver.
No, it will probably do. I mean, it's different because both are not exact solver, so they are doing a different approximation. But in hydro, both rho and HLC are good solver.
So they're both the same level of accuracy.
I think so. Yeah. So Miyoshi and Kusano propose. So this sort of HLD solver, which are, as you see, is more complex. It is based now on 5 different waves. Okay, so essentially the idea is that you still have the fastest waves, which are in this case the magnetosonic modes. You still have the contact discontinuity that was already, or that is already present in HLC, okay, and you should have a contact discontinuity even in MHD, of course. But on top of that, what they add is that in a sense they split the left start state and the right start state in 2, okay. So they introduce essentially the alpha modes here, okay. So you have now a 5-wave solver, which meant to represent the fast waves, the alpha waves, and the contact discontinuity. So the only waves that could be missing are the slow magnetic mode, which so far have not been considered, except, as I was saying briefly yesterday, by this so-called, I don't remember the name of that, this solver which has been written by the French mathematician François Bouchu, which is something extremely sophisticated that I'm not going to describe.
They're not considered in the row solver as well?
No, in the row solver they are, okay, but the drawback of rho, of course, is that it is a linear solver. So when you have strong discontinuity in the flow, the linear approximation breaks down. Okay, so typically you have to have some switch. Okay, so yeah, I'm speaking of the HLL family. And this solver by François Bouchu is actually a nonlinear 7-wave solver. Okay. Right. So now the trick, okay, is to find the flux that corresponds to this complicated wave fan. Once again, you can apply the jump relation as I just described briefly for HLC. So if you know the wave speed, you could apply the jump relation like this, like that, but it will lead presumably to a very, very complicated expression. So what is important to realize, and the reason why I think the calculation is, I would say, reasonable or not too complicated, it's because the nice properties that we had with HLLC, that the pressure, you remember the pressure is constant in HLLC because it describes the contact discontinuity, and contact discontinuity is something that describes a jump in density and the opposite jump in temperature but constant state in terms of pressure, which imply that the velocity, if you apply jump conditions, should be the same at the left and at the right, and that on top of that, the speed at which this contact discontinuity propagates is the same than the velocity of the fluid. So you have many, many simplifications. So this is still going to be true here, okay? But one then should remember that Alfvén waves are incompressible modes. Okay, they are transverse modes. And this implies that through an Alfvén waves, the pressure is also constant. And the longitudinal velocity is also constant. So this means that this nice property we had for HLLC can actually be extended through all the wave fan in HLLD, which means that we will get many, many simplifications. So essentially, the four longitudinal velocity will all be equal, because essentially the wave fan, or inside the wave fan, the fluid is in a sense incompressible. Okay, so all this velocity will be equal, and by again the virtue of the jump relation, this is also equal to the wave speed of the contact discontinuity. So you have many simplifications, and then again a good choice is to take the velocity inferred from the start state of the HLL solver, which makes again this global conservation. So that is still true with HLLD, and that makes the life much simpler. Doesn't mean that the work is finished, and I will probably not go through all steps because it will be a bit boring. I will just do it quickly, okay? And I will just describe roughly what you have to do. So the first things to do is a bit like for HLLC. You want to determine your start state. So the state here and here, okay? And this you can do it by applying the jump relation in the frame of the grid, because so you know your right state, and so if you have a good guess for the wave speed here, you can just apply the jump relation and then you get the right state. And the same here. So you can easily get this and this. Then things are, well, a bit more tricky. So we can we can find some quantities by applying again the jump relations here and here, but it turns out that you cannot, there is a sort of small inconsistency in the solver, which may actually indicate that an even more complicated solver should be required at some stage. So you have to, there are some small inconsistency. So the sum of the quantity will not actually exactly match this wave, the jump condition. So that's one of the things that could be improved. So you essentially determine the the wave speeds, apply again the jump condition through the contact discontinuity, and then well, you can finally infer the transverse velocity of the star state and the transverse magnetic field. And so once you have all these star quantities, you can compute the fluxes. Again, you take a volume of control and you repeat the same procedure that what has been done for HLL and HLC. And then you get this sort of, you get the flux depending, so it will depend on the signs of your 5 wave speed this time. Okay, and so the expression for the for the flux is slightly more complicated. So you recognize here the HLL standard flux, but in some cases it can be more complicated. Okay, so you will have 2 terms. So that we are going to add more and more complexity, and at some stage you have to sit down and write things for you. Okay, but so essentially this is the idea behind this HLD solver. So just some finite answer, some finite remarks. It can resolve various various isolated discontinuity like shocks and RFN waves, because those are really explicitly treated in the solver. One of the things it can't do at the moment are the slow magneto-acoustic waves, which are not included, and which will introduce some complexity because those are compressible waves. So that would imply that somehow you have to relax these nice properties of constant pressure through the wave fan. So it has been demonstrated that it preserves the positivity. And so, as I said, it's at the moment a nonlinear solver, unlike Rho, for example, which means that it is much more robust than Rho. And in many problems is doing very well. So it tends to be widely used at the moment. Okay, so that's why I spend effort on that. You should have at least a flavor of what you are doing if you are using it. Okay, right. Okay, are there any questions on this solver before I continue? No?
So, the fact that you miss the slow waves, how does that affect the actual results?
As I said, even if you take an extremely simple solver like the HLL1, or even worse, if you assume that the two fast modes, if you take, for example, the largest, if you take the absolute value of the 2 fast waves, okay, and you assume that one state that your wave fan is symmetric, okay, you give an even more diffusive solver, which is called the Lax-Friedrich solver, which is, for example, available in Ramses, and which is something extremely simplified and very diffusive. But still, if your resolution is high enough, you will get a good answer. So at the end of the day, it's a matter of the number of grid points which are available. So if you have a very, very large number of grid points, then I would say the solver would not matter too much. So you can always describe something reasonably well, even with an extremely coarse method, if the number of grid points is very, very high. So at the end, it's a sort of compromise between the method on one hand and the number of grid points. So the fact that you do not have the slow waves imply that if there are slow waves in the problem, you may have to have more grid points, okay, to describe them well, essentially. Okay, and in one of the exercise I suggested, you have actually a shock tube which has been set up by Miyoshi and Kusano, and where they discuss various features really solver by solver. So you can see exactly where the solvers are doing the same. I may discuss that briefly, and where it is, and where they are not equivalent. Okay. Okay. So to increase the accuracy of the method, the idea is to actually relax this assumption that the structure of the within the cell is flat, and to introduce some slope. Okay, so the idea is that, okay, we say the structure within the cell is not exactly, should not be flat. There is a gradient, and then it means that if I know the value of, say, density of the fluid variables in the center of the cell, I can reconstruct, say, the density at the interface of the cell. Okay, and this is this value that I need to calculate the fluxes through the Riemann problem. So if I know better the value at the interface, then the scheme will be more robust, or sorry, maybe more accurate. So you have to do that for space, and then you also do the same in time. So it means that you should also, at half your time step, essentially, correct this value, okay, in order to get second accuracy in time. So the way to see this is by using essentially a Taylor expansion in time and in space. So at time, at half the time step, and at essentially your at half your mesh point or your mesh size, which corresponds to the position of your faces. So what you want is to calculate well those quantities here. So before I go on into sort of more detail, I just would like to summarize a bit. So first you compute the extrapolated variables at the boundary. Okay, and then you evolve them at time half the time step, so delta t over 2, so it's a sort of predictor step. Then you will solve the Riemann fluxes, okay, and then you will update the variables using the fluxes, okay, and that will provide you a second order precision in space and in time. Okay, so that's the Mussel-Hancock scheme, which again is widely used in the MHD codes. So that's used typically in Flash, in ENSO, in Ramses, in Pluto. So there are issues with the reconstruction. So how you interpolate your variables at the boundary, at the interface. And actually, it has been. I mean, because the Godunov method has been proposed like 50 years ago, and for more than 20 years, people used to think that it was not a useful scheme because of this issue of reconstruction. Because if you don't pay attention to the reconstruction, so if you do not have a good scheme, then what you will do when you will reconstruct, in particular when you have shocks, you will introduce a lot of spurious oscillations like this, and this will lead to instabilities. particularly, as I said, when you have strong shocks. So this means that you want your reconstruction to be what is called the TVD, for total variation diminishing. So essentially you want that this quantity, okay, is not increasing when you perform the extrapolation, the reconstruction. Okay, so this is a strong constraint, and it's more in the sort of late 70s that scheme have been proposed to do this. So in Ramses, this corresponds to the slope type parameters that I described the first day, and the different values correspond to different methods. So essentially, what you want to avoid is this. See here, we have created a sort of local minimum. Okay, so that would not be that would not be TVD. Okay, you have a sort of new local minimum here, and that's bad because that's what creates this local oscillations. So what you want is, to have something like this, which has no local extreme. So various so-called slope limiter have been developed. So this makes that the reconstruction at the end of the day, they are really nonlinear, okay, because you have the slope limiter which are nonlinear. So essentially you can, so the left state is obtained by the center state plus this slope, and the same for the right states. And so you can essentially consider three slopes. So the one between, say, your cell and the left neighbors, the right neighbors, and between say the two neighbors. So generally speaking, your slope can be a combination of these three slopes. And so then there are various choices. I'm not going to describe them too much here. I'm just giving explicitly this mean mode slope, which typically guarantee that you will have no local extremum at the expense of accuracy, which means that sometimes you are not exactly at the second order for stability reason. So in Ramses, it corresponds to the slope tap equal 1, okay? And when you are doing a true problem, usually it's good to start with slope tap equal 1, and when the problem becomes really severe in terms of Mach number, shocks, and so on, usually the more aggressive slope, which is called the Munson slope, and which corresponds to slope tap equal 2 in Ramses, this often will crash. Okay, so on test problem it's okay. On test problem you want to have nice curves and they are not too nasty. So usually you can be very accurate and have very nice flows. But when you want to really address your true problem, reality catch you and you have to relax a bit. Well, it's because it will not preserve you. It will not guarantee exactly the presence or the absence of local minimum, Munson scheme. So it's not purely TVD preserving. It's like for the solver. Huh? There is always a sort of compromise between accuracy on one hand and robustness on the other hand. So it's always playing with these two. Okay, so I'm going to skip testing the scheme because I expect you to do it actually. So I expect that you will take one of the problem I propose, and that you will vary a lot the conditions. So that's this Musano scheme. And just to answer your questions, you see, for example, here for the fast modes, all the solvers are doing the same. because the wave fan is the same, okay, for all the solver, but within I mean for the slower modes, alphans, for example, you have differences between the solver, and you see HLL here is doing poorly with respect to, for example, to what you have for Rho and for HLD. Okay, so if you are interested by comparing all the solver, you may read that Musician Kisano paper, and you may run the test for various all the solver available, various slope as well. You also can. It's a good exercise to run the same problem with, say, slope tap equals 0, which means no reconstruction at all. So then you have one order scheme, and to then compare this with slope tap equal 1 and 2 and see how this affects your flow. Okay, so changing the solver, the slope, and then the resolution of the problem. You can, for example, try to use LLF with very high resolution. So in Ramses, you can actually have very high resolution because of the AMR scheme, where it is needed. And you can compare that with a low resolution calculation done, for example, with HLD. Okay, and you can have a hint of how much resolution do you need to compensate for the approximated solver or approximated method you have been used. Okay, so you can see what do you gain when you have a very sophisticated, accurate method in terms of resolution. So all of that, I think, is extremely useful for you to get an idea of how efficient the scheme are and what you are losing or what you are not describing well with a very approximated scheme. Okay. Right. Yeah, just a quick description. So this is the collapse test with the Lax-Friedrich solver. And you see the difference, that's the Rho solver. So for a sort of interesting or complicated problem, you see the difference. So for example, you see the outflow here. There is an outflow, but its structure is not as complicated as what you get for Rho, for example. Okay, so you see the sort of difference you get, and once again, it's when you run a simulation to study your problem, it's, I think, necessary to always repeat the same calculation with different resolution and also different methods. And what survive, okay, to that can probably be trusted. But there are many features that probably will not survive, which are method dependent. And it's important for you to identify what can be trusted and what can't be trusted. Okay. Right. So I'm going now to discuss a bit what is specific to the multi-D MHD. I mean, so far, in a sense, all what I've been saying is can be applied just for 1D flows. But when we want to simulate a 2D flow, there are some specific constraints that has to be addressed. Okay. So the specific things that, as I was describing yesterday, or two days ago maybe, is this DB, okay, constraint which must be satisfied. Okay. So in principle, this equation here is will ensure that dB is conserved. Okay, so if dB is 0 initially, if you take the divergence of these equations, it will show that in principle it should stay 0 as time goes on. But as for the mass conservation, it's the same that if you take say finite difference method, usually they will not conserve the mass, okay, while the mass should be conserved from the equation. So it's the same type of problem, just because you have discretized the equation locally, there is no necessarily reason why this quantity should be conserved. So this is the same here. So this is one problem. And the other problem is slightly more subtle, maybe. The hydrodynamical equation, as you remember, they can be written as conserved quantity or a time-dependent, say, quantity, like the derivative of the density, being equal to the divergence of a flux, which means that if you integrate over a volume, you get a surface integral of these fluxes. Okay, but this cannot be done for the magnetic field because there is no divergence here. There is a curl. Okay, and the equivalent of these properties is now to perform a surface integration. So if you integrate the Faraday equation onto the surface, okay, then you get the magnetic flux, and then you can transform this integral, the surface integral, into a contour integral. Okay, so essentially you have the circulation of the electromotor field, okay, of the electric field. So B dot V is the electric field. So what these equations tell us is that the flux variation is equal to the circulation of the electric field along the contour that encompass the surface you are considering. So it's a sort of electric circuits. Okay, so the good way to think to this equation is like you have electric circuits, so currents, all over the place. Okay, and that you must perform this sort of contour integrations everywhere. And it turns out to be very efficient to conserve dV, actually. So first, let me ask the simple question. Why, at the end of the day, why do we worry about dV? You may say we are doing numerics, so if it's a bit, numerics is always marginally right, or say always wrong, not too wrong, hopefully, but never accurate. So maybe it's not that important. Well, it turns out that there is something tricky behind. If you want to use the conservative form of the equation, which, as we saw, is very useful in the context of Riemann solver, it turns out that if dV is non-zero, okay, if you start from the fluid equation and you perform all the transformation to write the fluid equation in terms of conserved quantity, it turns out that if dV is not zero, this is not zero. There are terms that remain here, okay, and these terms correspond to forces along the field line. And same is true for the energy. So if you assume that you have zero here, okay, then you get an inconsistency. Then you get force along the field line and so on and so forth. Because you have truncated these terms here, which means that if you come back now to the standard formulations using the primitive variable, then you are missing these terms, and then you get a force along the field line, which is very bad. Okay. So more generally, I mean, people have been investigating various scheme with and without dV preserving, and so the sort of common experience is that when you do not worry about dV, okay, usually you end up instability and crashes. Okay, so schemes which are not paying attention to that, usually they quickly crash. So various methods have been proposed. I was planning to review them a bit, and I'm running a bit late, so I'm going to be very quick, just mentioning them in passing, and then I will spend some time on what is done in Ramses. And actually, probably Jim Stone next week will also spend some time on methods. And Jim is one of the worldwide experts, so I'm sure he will tell you a lot, much more better than what I can tell you myself. So the first method which has been proposed is the so-called potential vector methods. So the idea is that, well, if you use the potential vector, then by definition dv will be maintained because B is just the curl of A, so there is no way it could not be maintained. So in principle this is very appealing. The problem is that if you do this, the forces G cross B will now entail second order derivatives, because G is itself the curl of B and B is the curl of A, so you have second order derivatives. And numerically speaking, the second order derivatives are much less accurate than the first order derivatives, which means that you may get very large numerical fluctuations on your forces, and this is bad. Okay, so nevertheless, there are a few codes which are using these methods. For example, the Pencil code is using it, but Pencil is very high order. It's like 8th order. So it's extremely accurate, and therefore it can handle that. So the second method is the so-called Powell method. So the idea is that, okay, you have a div B, which is non-zero, but you will keep all the terms that I was showing you. So you will have source term in your fluid equation, which will depend on div B. This has some advantage. So in particular, so you can, I mean, the field is now located in the center of your mesh with the other variable. So in a sense, the topology or in the structure of the variables is simpler, and you will now have to deal with 8-wave solver instead of 7-wave solver. You have another wave which is introduced by the presence of non-div B conserving scheme, and that's so the row type solver have been developed for that, and they are described, for example, in this paper. You may have problems. One of the disadvantages is that you may have problems because precisely you have the source term here, which means that if you write the Rankine-Huggenot condition, the jump relation are going to be modified by the presence of these terms. And this implies then that your shock conditions could be modified. So okay, there may be issues like that. So a method which is quite popular is the so-called projection method, which so the idea is that you clean the field. Okay, so you do not try to maintain div B when you solve the equation, but then there is a step once you get the new variable that will consist to reproject the field, the magnetic field, in another magnetic field which will be close, okay, but will be dV free, and this can be done essentially by introducing this potential here. So if you solve this equation, then you can see that the magnetic field defined, new magnetic field B prime, which is equal to B plus the grad of phi, will be dV free. And then this implies that you have to solve a Poisson equation with div B terms replacing the density. Okay, so it's like you are doing gravity, but with div B. Well, of course, it's purely formal, but it's. And there are another way to do that, which is used now, also is to have a time-dependent equation that will advect div B. Okay, it's a sort of time-dependent version of this method. So this is working, I think, reasonably well in various contexts. One of the issues, I think, is when you are dealing with supersonic flows, like if you want to do supersonic turbulence, you may undergo problems. I mean, that's the common experience that people have been facing recently. In particular, because if you do this way, the Poisson equation that you have to solve will propagate instantaneously the information through your grids, and so you may have spurious associations around and these things. So, okay. So the last type of or the last strategy, which is the one I'm going to describe in more detail. So it's a constraint transport method, and so the idea here is to take advantage of the structure of the equations, so to really follow this conservation equation. So to write the magnetic field on the face, okay, and then to perform the contour integral. So to do this, you have to split your magnetic field. So not to write it in the volume, but to write it in the faces like that. Okay, and then you have faces and magnetic component perpendicular to these faces. Right. So this implies that your mesh is now staggered. So the magnetic components are not written in the same place than the other variables. Okay, so when you do that, okay, so this is a 3D view. So the magnetic field this component is perpendicular, and so what you need now to update your magnetic field component here is to do the circularizations, so to perform a contour integral here. So you need to know the electric field at the edges, like this. Okay, and then you have to circulate like that. Okay, and you do that for all faces. So it's like having circuits all around through your mesh. Okay, at each face is a small circuit. So then you can, as I said, update your magnetic field essentially by performing this calculation, and the electric field is as for the flux, it's the spatially average and temporally average electric field, exactly like for the Godunov scheme. So the very nice properties of this formulation is that now you can preserve the divergence of the magnetic field exactly, because there is a compensation exactly as for the fluxes for the hydro equation, where essentially you take some mass to a cell and you give the exact amount to the other cell, to the neighbors. It's the same thing here. There is a 2x2 compensation when you calculate the divergence, because the way things have been written. So if I consider a 2D situation for simplicity, so you have the magnetic field, the electric field perpendicular here to the screen. Okay, so to update this magnetic component, you have to do this electric field minus this one. Okay, and to update this component, you have to do this electric field minus this one. Okay, and then when you take the divergence of your component, of your magnetic field, you will have a 2x2 compensation between the electric field which had been subtracted here and the same electric field which had been added here. Okay, so it's exactly like for the mass. You take a fraction of, say, in that case, magnetic field to this guy, and you give it to this guy through this electric field here. So that compensates exactly by definition, and therefore dV is conserved by definition. So the mathematical formulation of that is this. You see, well, it's not difficult, but you have to write things explicitly. And if you look to this mess, you will see all the terms cancelling. You will find always a term to cancel the other one. So essentially, writing things explicitly, you have dV at time delta t, which is written here. That's just dV. Okay, and then you replace each component by its expression at times delta t plus the corresponding field, electric field that you have used to update this component. Okay, so here you have the magnetic field at time delta t at time say 0, and then you have the corresponding electric flux. Okay, and when you look around this expression, they sort of compensate 2x2, and then you find that the dV at times delta t is dV at times 0 plus 0, which is equal to 0. Okay, so dV is preserved. And I think I probably should stop here. Okay. So just a few words that I will discuss tomorrow. So the advantage of that method is clearly that that dV is maintained. Unlike what is sometimes said, because sometimes it is said in literature that constraint transport method and Godunov method are not compatible because the magnetic field is not written at the same place. This is not, I don't think this statement is totally true. As you will see, some components are written actually where they should be written. In particular, because you have one magnetic field which is located exactly where it's needed, which is the face. Okay, so that's very nice. Some components are not, but that's also the case for the volume when the magnetic field is written in the center. So I think it's neutral. One of the, I would say, disadvantage is that now we have to calculate the electric field, okay, which is not written at the faces. Okay, so we have now a sort of new type of problem, which I'm just giving a very quick overview of what I will describe tomorrow. Essentially, now the magnetic field is written, the electric field, sorry, is written at the corner, at the edge. Okay, so not at the center of the face. So instead of having now a sort of problem entailing two states, okay, now your electric field is really entailing four states. Okay, so it's in a sense it's a kind of 2D Riemann problem. Okay, so you have four states playing the same role. So you have to think in terms of 4D or 2D Riemann problem entailing four states. Okay, so I will discuss this a bit more tomorrow. And so I stop here for today. Are there any questions? Okay.